If they had anything, I assume they would have released it. The whole thing is a hoax.
Isn't this a turn of events? Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we are learning that Mark Carney brought in Stephen Harper for advice on how to deal with Donald Trump. You can't make this stuff up. This is hilarious. So this is dominating the news cycle. We're getting close here to a couple days until August 1st, where Trump may be increasing the tariffs up to 35%. Is he going to drag this on a little bit longer until there's a deal? What's going to happen? Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got Pierre Poilievre posting this. Former Liberal minister argues to keep ban on shipping energy off BC's north coast, which would rule out a pipeline. Carney has kept the shipping ban in place, proving that he and the Liberals are simply stringing Canadians along when he says he might one day allow a pipeline. I mean, David Eby doing the same thing here. We're not going to get anything done with multiple people blocking this. Not only that, David Eby and Mark Carney giving veto power to First Nations. Nothing's going to happen in this country until we have a real leader with a backbone that steps in and makes decisions for the best of all Canadians. We got this bombshell news dropping. So the longest ballot committee has rocked the boat a little too much here. Elections Canada has emergency powers to change essentially how the elections are going to happen, and it's an adapted ballot now. This video coming from Elections Canada saying because there's an unusually large amount of people in this, they're changing it to this. So this is an adapted ballot. Basically, you just write the name of the candidate in there. As long as the name is close, I mean, it's best to spell it right. But if the name is close, then they'll count the ballot. What I don't like about this is how close is it? What if you spell Pierre with 1 R, 2 R's, 3 R's, 4 R's, 5 R's? Hopefully we don't see any funny business election interference here. But essentially they'll just be handing people this, and then there'll be a big list on the side with all 209 candidates. Yeah, like this. And then you just write the name in there. One thing to note too, you need to write in the name like Pierre Poilievre. You don't write Conservative Party or that will not be counted. So I'm glad they did this, because if they printed those out, it would cost likely $15 to $20 per sheet. That's how long they are. So this election would get very expensive because of the stupid longest ballot committee. We got Elevate Podcast posting this, breaking tomorrow debate will be held for the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. Pierre Poilievre is expected to appear. So I believe that is happening today at 7 p.m. You can see here's a link, July 29th, 7 p.m. I wonder if all 200 candidates, 210 or whatever, will be at the debate. Moving ahead, we got this one. I haven't verified this, but this has been going around. The city of Vancouver is now accepting tips on their paid parking meters. If this is real, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. That's all I have to say. Moving ahead, we've got Stephen Harper has been brought in to help deal with Donald Trump because Mark Carney doesn't know how to handle the situation. So coming from the Toronto Sun says Harper says Carney team sought his trade advice, urges looking outside U.S. And they've got this on CTV. Stephen Harper talked about this in Saskatoon today.
Former Prime Minister is weighing in on Canada's relationship with the U.S. Stephen Harper was in Saskatoon addressing Canadian and U.S. leaders. Laura Woodward on his point of view on the situation.
Taking center stage at the Midwestern Legislative Conference in Saskatoon, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper addressed a room full of policymakers from 11 American states and 4 Canadian provinces, sharing personal stories about his time in politics, not mincing words about Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Like, Vladimir Putin is a real-life Bond villain. Like, he really is. He was very good at sizing up people's weaknesses and exploiting them and getting them to think he was on their side when he wasn't. I watched this over and over again with this guy.
But the main focus of his speech, Canada's tense relationship with the United States.
This government did actually ask me a few weeks ago my advice.
Harper revealing that Ottawa recently turned to him for guidance on how to handle escalating tensions with the United States.
My advice was, yes, on the economy, we've got to kind of get something short-term worked out with the Trump administration, but this really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets.
The thing with that is we need time to do that. So as I've been saying, they need to be giving Trump the best deal he's seen, just offer so much. And a lot of the stuff we should be doing anyways, right? Like securing the border. But the Liberals have let this run amok. They want all this crime, corruption, and chaos in our country. They don't want to clean up the corruption. That's the problem. But if we had a competent government in power, they could offer a lot, get no tariffs, and then we could slowly build things out and get new pipelines, LNG, new ports set up, and we could get more business partners that are not America.
News reached out to the federal government for comment about contacting Harper, but did not hear back by the time of broadcast. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe supports Harper's call for trade diversification, backing the idea of more international customers.
In addition to accessing the rest of the world, access Canadian markets as well. We might be a little bit contrary to public opinion. We think we should be increasing our trade with the United States of America as well, moving forward, but by producing more.
That's a great take. Why not? Why not increase production and make more money for our country, even if that is going to America? As we get more money, we can build things out, get more trading partners, and become stronger and more independent so we're not so dependent on America. Once again, though, Carney's got to throw supply management in there to get this done. He's not going to do it, though.
The clock is ticking. Canada remains under the threat of a 35% tariff on exports.
Listen to Stephen Harper talking about making a deal. We really need this guy right now.
How do you balance the interest of the country with the priorities of other nations as you get to those deals?
Well, we're sort of indirectly talking about President Trump and the Art of the Deal, which is a good book, by the way. I actually think I'm a pretty good deal maker, and the key to deal making is win-win. That's really the key to deal making. When I hear people say that their idea of a deal is they can get up on a podium and explain how the other guy lost, that's actually not how you make a deal. I always used to say, I never made a deal with anybody without, first of all, trying to understand him before I got to the bargaining table, what the other guy really wanted and needed. And then being able to, on the day we announced the deal, political, trade, whatever, being able to say not just why we won, but why he won too. And so I just think that's really, that's a really critical lesson that I'm worried is slipping through fingers these days.
Yeah, so Mark Carney not negotiating in a way that is going to get us a deal because he's not offering up what Donald Trump wants. I mean, he put supply management, the dairy cartel, in law just before negotiations. It tells you everything. Moving ahead, Stephen Harper just told us his advice that he gave to Mark Carney and his team to diversify Canadian exports away from the United States. He actually just said if he was asked a year ago, he would say to integrate further with America, but now that opportunity is off the table. And
Canada has been, to be blunt, this is nothing against the U.S. The reality is, independent of the current disputes, we have been grossly overweight the United States as a country, and there is no reason for that. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous. And the other thing, in terms of security, my advice to the government is, yes, absolutely spend more on defense. We should have been doing it all along. But we spend a lot more in defense, the border is a shared responsibility, let's make sure we spend a lot more on defense so that we can be independently responsible for our own land, seas, and skies, independent of the United States. And I'm just going to tell you right now, one political role I still have, I chair the Global Federation of Conservative Parties, and I can tell you that this is the advice every allied capital is getting from everybody like me that they talk to. And this is not ideal, but I just think it's a reality. The cat's out of the bag. You can't, or toothpaste is out of the tube, whatever you want to call it. You can't put it back. I think it's unfortunate. I think in the long term, this direction will weaken the free world more than it will help it, and it will, I think, ultimately weaken the United States as well. So I think it's unfortunate, but that is the reality of the situation that we have to deal with.
That is the reality of it. At this point, we do need to diversify more, most notably with things that are of highest value: energy, oil and gas. Countries want it, we have it, we should be sending it out every single day. Yet we've got people like David Eby, Mark Carney blocking it. Moving ahead, we got Scott Reed on CTV talking Trump tariffs. He thinks tariffs are coming. There's no getting away from this.
Hello there, Scott. So do you think that there's going to be a trade deal by this Friday? Do you see that being extended? What are your thoughts?
There doesn't feel like there's much momentum. I mean, obviously, we saw President Trump is in Europe. He secured the deal with the EU. He's had some deals with Asia. he himself said it's simply not his priority at this time. He wants to focus on those jurisdictions. He has leverage in terms of the talks with Canada because he is securing deals with others, insofar as he doesn't need a deal with us, his largest trading partner, because he is securing large scale trading deals. So I wouldn't bet an American or a Canadian dollar that we will see a cold hard deal that suits our interests by August 1st. No, I wouldn't.
And will there be a penalty or a price to pay for that, do you think, Scott?
I mean, we have to hope that the response of the White House will be, we continue to talk and we'll allow things to be kicked down the road a little while longer. And that would avoid perhaps an increase in some of the tariffs that he's threatened to raise. That would be our hope. And, you know, the fear is that he will say, no, August 1st is here, so we're going to raise those duties. My hope and my belief is he'll probably, if the White House wants to maintain talks, then they'll maintain the status quo. But it's very difficult to predict what Donald Trump is going to do. And he may decide that it's in his interest, even if negotiations are continuing on, to jack those tariffs because it will make us feel the pain all the more and therefore all the more eager to take a deal of his liking.
Let's talk about the framework trade deal that was reached between the U.S. and the EU yesterday. Judging just by the optics alone, Trump looked happier than van der Leyen in sitting there at Turnberry. Emmanuel Macron has said that the deal is a dark day for Europe. What do you make of the criticism of the deal, and what does it tell us about negotiations, perhaps, with Canada?
Look, we're looking at our future. Now, we don't know if the exact numbers will be the same that Canada will get, but we're looking at our future insofar as we are witnessing in Europe a deal that is not good for Europe, but is the best deal available and no question superior to what the alternative would have been if they'd not had a deal. Because Trump...
That's just it. So we need to do the same thing. Mark Carney should be rolling out the red carpet with a great deal, listing out a whole bunch of things, just making it a huge win for Trump, because then he can go back to America and say, look what I got from Canada. That's what he needs to roll out. It's got to be a lot of things and a lot of big ticket things. And one of those has to be supply management. Carney's not putting that on the table. This deal's not going to happen. I suspect we might be getting 35% tariffs here. If Mark Carney does anything funny with that, retaliates in any sort of way, then Trump's just going to jack that up. He'll just turn into 50% tariffs and 60% tariffs.
Would have made Europe pay and pay through the nose. So this is the challenge that partners are facing. This is the challenge that we are facing. I don't believe there is going to be a great deal to be had on the table. So 15% across the board tariffs. Why does Trump want that? He wants the revenue that he can secure from these tariffs. He wants that duties. That's what I believe this is all about. There are two elements to this deal fundamentally, and most of these deals. Buy a bunch of stuff from America and tariffs across the board, 15, 20, 18%, 19% in one case. And that's so that he can get a steady stream of revenue that he thinks will allow him to say to people in America, see, I'm getting some scratch back for America. We can use this to lower income taxes, to pay for that great big beautiful bill, as he calls it. And I think that that's probably the kind of deal he's going to ask Canada to take. And we may have to do so.
Yeah, so Donald Trump wants to lower or reduce income tax. That's one of his campaign promises, and that's what he's trying to do here.
So we're waiting for Prime Minister Mark Carney to make an announcement any moment now in Prince Edward Island. No doubt he's going to be asked about...
So Mark Carney's already made that announcement. That's that he's cutting the bridge toll fees from $50 to $20. By the way, Pierre Poilievre said he would get rid of those fees altogether. And at this point, with Mark Carney's outrageous spending, how is he going to pay for this now?
About this, how do you expect the Prime Minister to respond to questions from reporters today with that August 1st deadline looming?
I think you can expect what you heard from him last week, maybe even more intense. I think he's going to try to diminish people's expectations of some breakthrough, wonderful deal for Canada coming on Friday. I think you'll likely hear him reinforce that, you know, we're at the table, we're working hard, we won't take a crummy deal, and we will protect Canadian interests no matter what we do. Yeah, those are the lines that he's stuck to. I expect he'll continue to stick to them.
It's funny looking back, Mark Carney didn't say any of that stuff. He stumbled over his words. He really looked quite awkward answering the question because he knew there's no deal on the table. Trump's not even talking to them right now.
And if there's any change, it will likely be to even further underscore that the likelihood of an outstanding deal is very low and not to get our expectations too high. That seems to be the job that he is undertaking these days, one of expectations management for a country that's looking at that August 1st deadline with wide eyes.
Time will tell here. We got a couple days. Canada was never in a power position. This government is ridiculous. Poor Scott, his hero, turned out to be a moron. Elbows up, Scott. 35% on items not covered by current trade agreements. Steel and aluminum, 50%. So yeah, we have USMCA on a lot of stuff, but that is up for negotiation next February. So maybe we get 35% tariffs on everything come February. This is a slippery slope. We need a good deal now and then have that go into February and then renegotiate USMCA, CUSMA, and have that also be what it currently is, not having a bunch of tariffs added to it. It shows Carney was the wrong weasel for the job. Next up, we got RFK Jr. and Donald Trump going after Big Pharma with their outrageous prices in America. There's numerous examples. We'll just play this one.
A common asthma drug costs almost $500 here in America, but costs less than $40 in the United Kingdom. So $40 in the United Kingdom, which is where this gentleman told me he paid a small amount for his shot. But think of that. So $40 versus $500 here. That's not even bad. There are much worse examples. And the weight loss drug, Ozempic, costs 10 times more in the United States than in the rest of the developed world. 10 times more. Why? What did we do?
So as you can see, there's multiple examples. Trump and his health department, they're going after Big Pharma now. What is going to happen with this? This has been a big scam that they've been profiting on for years. Looks like they're cleaning this up. Something else that happened here, Donald Trump taking questions. He's asked once again about old Joffrey Eggstein. Listen to this. And as Brian Lilly points out here, I do find it beyond odd that Trump ran with the Eggstein files on releasing them and now calling them a hoax. He calls them a hoax in this video. He is covering this up. He does not want to release these. Something stinks.
That you have not been briefed on the Epstein files, or your name has not appeared in the Epstein files. But doesn't the AG have to tell you if your name is...
Well, I haven't been overly interested in it. You know, it's a hoax that's been built up way beyond proportion. I can say this, those files were run by the worst scum on earth. They were run by Comey, they were run by Garland, they were run by Biden, and all of the people that actually ran the government, including the Autopen. Those files were run for 4 years by those people. If they had anything, I assume they would have released it. The whole thing is a hoax. They ran the files. I was running against somebody that ran the files. If they had something, they would have released. Now, they can easily put something in the files that's a phony. Like, as an example, Christopher Steele, a person you know well, happens to be from your country. But Christopher Steele, as an example, wrote a book, a dossier. We call it the fake news dossier. And the whole thing was a fake. The whole thing was a fake. They can put things in the file that are fake.
So something is very bizarre with this whole situation. I have Joffrey Eggstein's black book. Donald Trump is in there along with about 10 or 15 contact points, phone numbers, emails, etc. He's saying that Biden could have planted information. Biden didn't release anything because his name wasn't in there. Something is funny. Something stinks with this. I think these guys are covering each other's backs because they're probably both Democrats and Republicans are both on those flight logs, client list, all of it. They're protecting each other. And you've got Maxwell here, who according to Brittany just talked to the DOJ for 2 whole days, 100 names. She's in jail for what she did, but if there's no client list, then how can she be in jail? This is funny here. No Eggstein list, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, etc. are innocent, or Trump is lying. The hunter became the hunted. This is a messy situation. Trump's got to come clean.